Welcome, Super Secret Agent trainees, to WhizGirls Academy. Today we have our special secret agent master trainer. Her name is Paloma Gonzalez-Rojas, and she's the founder of Atacama. So welcome, Paloma.
Thank you so much, Kirin. I'm very excited to be here and tell you a little bit about myself and my work.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So I know that you have a PhD, and I know that you're a founder of Atacama. But first, we're going to start from the beginning. So tell us about your childhood.
Okay, I was born in Chile. I am Latin American. I was born in Santiago de Chile. My parents had a house near the mountains. So Santiago has huge mountains. Well, all the Chilean border to Argentina has a mountain range. So there's a huge presence of geography and nature in general there. I was really quiet as a kid. My mom thought that I didn't know how to talk, but I only say the words that I care about. Like, for example, I only like water. I didn't like juice or anything like that. So I would say water instead of like getting juice or anything else that people would give me. That's very early. Afterwards, I was super crafty and a good student. I always got like awards, multiple awards, to the point that I didn't invite my parents to all of the awards that I got because it was, I don't know, it was happening often. So then I thought that I in a point I stopped caring a little bit about these awards, but I was really good student. So I was always interested in the learning. And yeah, but I was generally like super curious, super quiet, and super crafty. So I loved arts, I love science, I love math, and chemistry.
Okay, this is interesting. So you talked a little bit about your passions and hobbies as a child, and now you're doing a lot of that stuff. But tell us, like, if you played with anything, and if you had a dream job when you were a little kid.
When I was a kid, when I was around like 10, I was super interested in ecology. So I was super interested in the environment, and there were certain like TV shows, and it wasn't that common as it is right now. So there was like one TV show and one magazine that talked about materials and how we deal with the environment and how cities and humans interact with the forest and the ocean and all that. And I used to love to learn about this and yeah, so in this TV show they also talk about space and things like that. So I love to watch that. So that was super important for me. And then reading this magazine, and that it was about ecology and recycling and like clean materials and about crafts. So I love to have toys, but I generally got bored very fast. So that was, I don't know, I like to play with toys that would do something. So then, like, I have to say that dolls weren't that interesting for me because I guess that creating stories wasn't that interesting for me. And I know that is common for many girls, and it's amazing. I have friends that are great at this. It's just I think it was a matter of personality. That in my case, I wasn't that interested, and I didn't have that much access to like Legos or things like that. So that came later in my life. But I love to do crafts and build things. So I used to collect like cardboard boxes and things like that. And I also used to steal my father's tools. So my father was an architect, and I love his like pens and tools for drawing. So I used to like take them and hide them in my room. and kind of because I wanted to do like the same thing that he was doing. So, yeah, but in terms of toys, like having one special toy, I would say that I wasn't that attached. Honestly, it was more about the experiences. I would say.
That makes sense. Okay. And what about like dream job? Did you have like, was the TV show like saying you should do this as a job, or was there like your parents, like you mentioned your dad was an architect, was that something you thought of maybe like?
Yeah. So I have to say that these are my interests, and like I have interest in ecology and engineering, in building things. Yeah, my dad was a huge influence in that regard, so he was an architect, and I originally studied architecture, but I think that my first dream job was to be a lawyer because I thought that things were super unfair in the world. So I thought that I could do something about it. But then I realized that I like to build things more than and that I could work in like fairness in other ways. So I started in architecture, but also like more engineering oriented type of career. So then I started with that with building things. Like I think that at the end I figured that my dream job was about engineering and building things for the world.
Okay, interesting. When did you hear about the word STEM? So science, technology, engineering, and math.
I heard about that word when I came to the US. In my country, it's not that established. Of course, there is a focus in mathematics and physics and chemistry, like in sciences and engineering or STEM. When I started at MIT, I came here to do software development for architecture and study how to use artificial intelligence and so on. And here here it was the first time that I heard that there was a clear divide between like the arts and or communications and then engineering and so on. Yeah.
And did you have any mentors along the way? I know you mentioned uh, you really started with MIT, but like when you went to the University of Chile, did you have any mentors there as well?
Yeah, in Chile, I had several mentors. So I had advisors that were important in my school. My father was also like super important. I worked with him when I was in Chile because before coming to MIT, I still thought that I was going to work in architecture or work in academia. Those mentors were generally males, I have to say, and it was generally difficult to identify myself with them while I was in college. In my case, there was still like only a few female professors in the whole university, and then their profiles were they were super different from me. So it wasn't until I came to MIT that I found like mentors that are closer to my way of thinking. Yeah, but the idea is to understand like how mentors have a role in development.
Yeah, I mean, when I think everyone has in different parts of their life, there's different mentors. Like when you're in elementary school, your teachers, in a sense, your parents, or maybe like some people that you look up to. In high school, college, like I guess every different version of your life, there's a different mentor or someone that you want to be inspired by.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, my most important role model was my chemistry professor. So she was amazing, and also, like I would say, smart in every way. Like for example, because I was good in art, or like generally like super interested in everything that I could learn. I was good in all the classes, and so I would show her even like my paintings or drawings or things like that to my chemistry teacher, and she was interested anyways. So I thought that that during that period, that was like inspiring to me, just to see that that being in like sciences and hard sciences also could include an admiration and interest that would include other areas, like even art. And so that was very important for me when I was in high school.
Yeah, it sounds like she had an effect on you. Okay, so take us through the journey. So you decided to go to the University of Chile, and what did you major in? And then you went to MIT and got a master's, and then you got a PhD. So walk us through that whole journey.
Yeah, so when I went to the architecture school in Chile, I was interested in design, and but I was always curious about machines and technology and coding. And so what I did, I and we couldn't access to classes like this one, like this that would include those topics. So what I did was to start working with friends that they were mostly male. So we were a group of friends that it was six males and me. That we were the only students in architecture that were interested in coding and interested in using all types of machines. And I would just spend my time with them mostly, and we learned how to code on our own, on our own time. And also, we started learning how to use 3D printers and laser cutters and all of these machineries that are now in fabrication labs that are much more accessible right now. So because we learned all of this, we also started like teaching the other students. So then we became like TAs, like teacher assistants for all of these classes. And I have to say, like at some point, we even knew more about the machines that we had in our school than like even the professors, because we were using them all the time. And also like creating like excuses, like different types of projects that would allows us to do these to build these skills. So when I finished architecture, uh, I went to work in a company that was building the second biggest stadium of my country. And I went to work there just because they were doing the stadium. I always wanted to work with my father, but that was a huge opportunity, because remodeling a stadium is like super special, like doesn't happen very often in countries. So I went to do that, and that was a great experience. When I was working that, I mostly work in construction. I didn't get to design that much any parts, and I was actually really happy doing most of the construction. And that was for a year, and then I went to work with my father in architecture, in his architecture firm, and building hospitals and schools, mostly for the government of Chile. And so during that time, I couldn't forget about like everything that I learned with my friends, like with my gang, like school gang that we used to work together. And so I applied to MIT to come here to the architecture department and do software. I wanted to learn about machine learning and artificial intelligence and how we could simulate pedestrians. And I only applied to MIT. Like generally, when people want to go to graduate school, they apply to like 50 universities, because it's super difficult to get accepted. And I only applied to MIT. and I got accepted right away. So it was like really, really good in that sense, and exciting, and also lucky. Like I know that there is some luck that was on my side at the time, and that was 2013 when I came for a master's. And during my master's, I mostly focused in gathering data for simulating pedestrian motion, so simulating people with artificial intelligence. And there is a lack of data, so I focused on that during my master's. And during my PhD, that it was also in the architecture department and developing software for the simulations. I focus mostly in finding machine learning algorithms and developing machine learning algorithms that would allow me to simulate people moving through space or through buildings mostly. So we can help architects and builders and other people to understand how people move in these spaces for better design, or to better understand how these buildings will impact the people that is living in them. And the thing that happened during my PhD is that I couldn't stop thinking about construction. So I was coding and learning and mostly taking computer science classes, machine learning classes at MIT. But I couldn't forget about material development and also about ecology. So the problems with the environment, climate change, and it got to the point that I wanted to start working in materials and that were biodegradable, mostly to feed these machines, like for 3D printers and for laser cutters, for two reasons. Because these machines generally use plastics, which are very negative for the environment. All types of plastics that are not biodegradable are super toxic for people. And so but also in countries like Chile, what happens generally is that you can access to the machinery, but you cannot access to the supplies, because they're super expensive and they are imported from the northern hemisphere. So then, so I wanted to build a way for people to develop these materials where they are and take advantage of natural resources, so they could use also this type of machines. So during my PhD, I started working with professors here at MIT from material science. So basically knocking the door to professors that I have never seen in my life, and just asking for help, and then asking to do projects and trying to learn on my own. And so this is how I ended up TAing for a professor in advanced manufacturing. So Professor Neil Gershenfeld, who works a lot in fabrication. So, and has fab labs for kids and things like that are super interesting. And this is also how I met my co-founder, and ended up got interested in entrepreneurship as well. After I finished my PhD in 2021, that was during the pandemic and all that, I got a fellowship from the Climate and Sustainability Consortium at MIT. So that gave me the opportunity to do whatever I wanted, as long as it had to do with sustainability and climate change and this type of environmental goals. So I moved again to chemical engineering to do a postdoc with a professor that is an expert in polymer science. So it's a physicist that works in polymer science. So that's plastic science. But I told him that I wasn't going to work with any petrol-based plastics. There was no way. But I would only work with organic plastics and evaluate their how they function, and try to accelerate them with computation, so with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And that worked out also, which was like super unexpected, but then it worked. and that is the base of my current company, Atacama, and the work that we're doing with my co-founder.
Yeah, wow, that's quite a journey. So you're currently doing research, but you're also co-founder of Atacama Biomaterials. And so tell us like how this idea came about, because I think our super secret agents are curious, like when you are a founder of a company or you create something, is it like an instant thing, or like how long has it been, and like walk us through that whole process.
Yeah, so the work that we have been doing for Atacama has it started 4 or 5 years ago. As I mentioned, in the middle of my PhD, I was like still thinking about climate change, and that led me to work with material science professors and Professor Neil Gershenfeld that works in advanced manufacturing. So that's 3D printers and laser cutters and fabrication machines. And because of that, I TA for him, and he sent me to work in a lab here in Waltham that belongs to a software company called Dassault Systems, because they have an engineering software called SolidWorks that we use a lot to model machines and to design other processes here at MIT. And there I met another Chilean, my co-founder, which is like super unexpected, but he was working there because he's a mechanic, Jose Tomas, my co-founder, so he's a mechanical engineer and from Chile, and he came to Dassault Systems to do a joint program between MIT and that lab with Professor Nigel Schoenfeld. So I was like, I want to do these materials and 3D print them. And he was like, okay, I know how to do 3D printers and I know how to build this machine, so let's do it together. And I was like, okay, amazing. And this is how we started working together and developing one of the first 3D printers of wood materials, so wood-based materials for 3D printers, like completely organic from nature, and that also ends in nature. And that was the beginning of our journey as a startup, as a company. At the beginning, we started with this idea of creating these materials for 3D printing. And what we do now is fairly different. I want to tell you that when you're building a company and you're an entrepreneur, things change for different reasons. So we started with the idea of 3D printing, but then we realized that there was more urgency in other problems in the world that we want to tackle. Like, for example, the problems with pollution, with plastic pollution that is everywhere. And so we continue working for around 2 years and trying to figure out what was the best use of these materials, the technologies that we were developing, and how would we like bring them to the world in a way that would matter. And so we started by testing together and also creating these workshops that for communities and we would teach people how to create these materials and develop them themselves. And so this is how we tested a wide range of materials, like from seaweed and from paper and from different types of foods or seashells. So all of these have chemical components that we can extract and turn into different forms of plastics. And we realized that the best application is in packaging, because this is a huge problem for the world right now. And then we came up with the idea of creating Atacama. At the same time, these negative consequences of plastic pollution started having a bigger footprint in the world. And in Chile, there is a desert called the Atacama that is in the north of the country. It's the driest desert of the world, and it's good for observatories. So there's lots of NASA observatories in there, and astronauts and other people do testing there and so on. But it's huge, and people started turning some areas of the desert into a plastic dump. And so they just ship containers from different parts of the world and just dump them there. And as Chileans, we know that what goes to the desert stays in the desert. Like no one will ever pick up none of it. And the desert doesn't have the power to degrade. Like, these plastics don't degrade in other conditions. They will never degrade in the desert. So that's having a huge negative impact in this like nature wonder. And so that's why we decided to name the company Atacama Biomaterials, because of the desert, because it was also like, as Chileans, it was breaking our hearts, honestly. So we love the desert very deeply, and we name it so we remember what our mission is, which is like saving places like that. There are other reasons why we chose to do packaging and develop these plastic materials from organic sources is that there is also another problem in the world about clean energy. So we hear a lot about clean energy, and we all have an idea that means solar, and that means wind power, but the question comes like, why are people not using these energies to create plastics or to other manufacturing processes, so we can get rid of the negative ones? And the answer is that these energy sources have the power to reach certain temperatures during manufacturing that are not useful for petrol-based plastics or for other types of plastics that require very high temperatures and very for extended periods of time. So then, on the other hand, organic materials can be transformed into working plastics with lower temperatures. So this is another factor that came into our process of creating the company, that showed us that because we would enable the implementation of these types of energies in manufacturing, it was really important for us to develop these materials and put them in the market to help people. So in general, I would say that for creating a company, what's important is that on one hand to hear their own interest, to hear themselves. Like we have to hear our own like personalities and learn about what we are interested in and what we are really passionate about. I'm passionate about chemistry. I'm passionate about artificial intelligence, coding in general, and I'm interested about the environment and creating this world that is good for everyone. And so, but then when founders start companies, things change a lot because of the technologies that we're able to access and develop, and because of what the world needs. That's I guess a difference between being in academia. There's more space to test things that may or may not work, but when people decide to be an entrepreneur, they have to create products that people want. So then there has to be another side of the equation that is responding and that is creating a need and is adopting the technologies and products that the companies are developing.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a balance of the best of both worlds because you're doing research, you're a scientist, you're a machine learning expert in AI and everything, but then you're also like solving a massive problem, which when you were talking about all the stuff and the whole waste and everything in Chile and the desert, I was like, oh my God, like I think in my previous life we contributed because I used to be in the toy business, right? And like I worked on Barbie and Bratz and like all of those dolls had packages, any toy, like anything, right? So like I'm like I was imagining like all these doll packages in the desert in Chile, and like you're like doing something to get rid of that. Like that's huge. That's massive.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously not just toys. That's my world where I come from, but like, you walk into the store and it's like everything has a package and like all of these things keep adding up and like we need to figure out a way to get rid of it. So I think that's a big endeavor, and I think our super secret agents will probably love to follow your journey moving forward because you're doing some really cool things. Um,
Thank
okay, so you mentioned Impact Fellow at MITT, also postdoc fellow at MITT. So tell us a little bit about how you became the machine learning expert and like what does that mean? Is there like tell us about that.
Perfect. Okay, becoming a machine learning expert for me was to understand which type of algorithms and which type of software could be applicable to specific problems. So I came to MIT to do the simulation of the trajectories of people. And it's not a straightforward like problem. It's not like, okay, there is this algorithm that will simulate the way that people move or the trajectories of people through a corridor, for example. And so then I had to take lots of classes, read lots of papers, do lots and lots of exercises, but also to understand what type of approach would be the best depending on the problem that I was trying to solve. So, for example, because people have agency and have intentions while they are moving in space, and that these agencies and intentions are generally open, like open-ended. So we have determination to do this and that, but then we can change our mind and then continue doing something different. I will have to use generative AI. So generative techniques, and now it's like super famous, but at the time I didn't know that it was gonna be like this. But I will have to use algorithms that would be generally open-ended. That this is one of the basic ideas of generative AI. That in a way the end result of what the algorithm will produce is not completely known beforehand. These algorithms make combinations of data to create something that is relatively new to a certain degree of novelty. And when I was studying that during my master's and PhD, I didn't know that this was the right approach that I should take. So what I had to do was to learn several approaches, several techniques, and test them, and also evaluate them according to the problem that I was trying to solve. And so to become an expert, in a way, is what you have to do is to learn different approaches, even though they may not be useful for the problems that you want to solve, but also understand them and understand their scope or their applications and how to develop them. And in my case, it has been really good and useful because, for example, with this approach of simulating pedestrian motion, I learned a lot about simulations, and I learned a lot about particle simulation and robotic simulation. So these are software that are generally used to train robots to train robotic arms to do a certain movement and then pick up something and then leave it somewhere else, or for particles, for fluid dynamics, and other types of simulations that are transferable to different to different contexts or fields. And what I learned for simulating people, so people walking in space, was applicable to simulating particles and molecules. And this is what I ended up doing in my postdoc. So I went from simulating the trajectories of people to simulating the trajectories of molecules, which is a huge jump and also requires different type of knowledge. But because I learned where to apply different approaches, I could also see the potential of specific tools to be useful and applied in these very different examples. So I think that this is very important when becoming an expert, is that you have to understand what a tool is useful for, and what are all of the potential applications, and learning a wide range of tools and approaches. And hopefully that makes sense, and I didn't use like too complicated words, but I really hope that the students can understand it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm not sure if they know what that means, and maybe if you can explain it to them, is like, what is AI and generative AI? I think that's like a word that's coming up a lot lately, and I think if you can explain it to them, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So generative AI, what it's in the media and everywhere mostly right now, ChatGPT and BART, and there are a couple of new models, refers to large language models. So in general, what people are referring to generative AI or Gen AI are referring to large language models, which are models that take all of the written documents, written websites, written documents in any format that are capable of accessing, evaluate them, and start finding patterns. So we see that in our phone, when in our phones or computers, when we start writing hello, then the computer will suggest like, how are you doing, in our text, because there's a pattern, there has been patterns that have been recorded in these models that have shown that it is very likely, like the probability of having these two words, like how, or these three words, are how are you doing, like three words after would happen after hello. So lots of people do the same thing. So then the model is saying, okay, this person probably will do the same thing regarding to the context in which that action is happening. So writing a text, for example, to a friend. So these are generative AI or generative artificial intelligence models that refer mostly to large language models. So sometimes these models look like they are thinking, or they are doing something similar to how humans think and reason, and it's because they are repeating the patterns that reflect that behavior in text, in written form. So in a sequence of letters and words and sentences that have meaning and coherence among them. So that's why sometimes it's confusing, that it may look like they are thinking, but they are definitely not thinking. And the thing is that they have so much data from written form, from books, from papers, from articles, from people chatting, from people's messages, from anything that can be found in the internet, is that they have a pattern almost for everything. So that's why they are so good at predicting almost anything in any context. The thing with these generative models is that particularly the large language models, they only can say what's in the text or in the data set. They only can have an answer to what has been fed to them before. So if ever comes something new, they don't know how to answer it. But also there are different types of generative models. So what I do in my work and in my company, I also do generative models for molecules, which is a little different because what I do is I use physics. So I use physics models that describe the behavior of particles and then create my own data. So I create millions and millions of behaviors and then learn patterns from that data to predict what a particle would do in a new context as well. But in my case, I use physics and three-dimensional behavior and chemical behavior and so on. And as I use the generative approach in this context, other computer scientists and other experts are using generative AI as well for other types of applications.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to be really helpful for our secret agents. Okay, I'm going to switch to some student questions. What superpowers do you find you have that have pushed you to where you are today?
A superpower that I have, I think, is that I am really, really open to learning. So I would say that, and pivoting, like resilience, like I change, and change fields, change careers, and have huge drastic change when I feel like it's worth it. But I also find people that help me, like for example my chemistry professor when I was young, and then my advisors in Chile. But here at MIT, I have found other professors that have helped me as well. So I make strong connections with these mentors, and I guess that that helps them as well, because they learn through new things through me, and that allows me to also change and pivot and follow my passions.
Okay, awesome. What did you learn when you were 11 years old that you've kept with you today?
11. That's a while. I learned a poem by a Chilean poet, Pablo Neruda. Yeah, so he won the Nobel Prize in poetry, and I learned a poem about the mountains and a horse going through the mountains. So yeah, I still remember it.
Yeah, it sounds like something about you're going through mountains now with your company and being a founder. So like there's kind of like a correlation between like this really resonated with you at the time and now you're like going through it. So it's like reminding you of like, hey, we can push through the mountains. You have the resilience, you have the grit and the persistence to go through. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never thought about it until now. So great, thank you.
It sounds interesting. Okay, you recently won an award. I think it was LOR something. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I know you posted something on LinkedIn. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. The award that we recently got an award from the Chilean government that is for manufacturing. So we have won a couple of awards recently. And is this one that you're interested?
Whichever one you want to tell us about, or all of them, whichever.
Okay, no. So I'm particularly interested about the manufacturing award, because that was given by the Chilean government, and is to promote the use of clean energies in manufacturing, but also develop technologies in my country. And we have our lab here in Massachusetts, in Boston, but also a lab in Chile. And so this award that is funds, a large amount of funds, and also support will allow us to build a little factory, like a demonstration factory in Chile, in which we can develop our materials and develop the biodegradable packaging that with clean energy, and test our AI. So that's super exciting for us.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. Um, okay, so tell us like how your day to day looks like. Is there a typical day? Is there like what does a day of a founder of a massive company like this look like?
My day is because my day is mostly about developing the company and having lots of meetings, which I didn't expect it. I used to work mostly in the lab, in developing the materials and in developing the algorithms myself. But to build companies like this, we have to coordinate a lot of people and coordinate a lot of stakeholders and different like suppliers of materials and suppliers of equipment. So my day to day looks like sitting and developing documents and structures and analyzing how my company is doing, working with teams, having meetings with different teams inside of my company that are doing different parts of the work that we need, and also talking to clients, so talking to companies and understanding what they need and how can we serve them the most. So this is part of being a company, is that we need to sell products and also understand what would make companies switch from very pollutant and negative materials to like to carbon zero materials, to materials that are more respectful with the environment, and how can they like actually implement these changes in practice. So understanding what they need and how to help them. Yeah.
Wow, okay. Looking into the future is exciting. What do you imagine for girls in STEM down the road, and how can we make sure that everyone gets a chance to be part of the STEM adventure?
I think that what I envision for girls in STEM is that at one point it won't be as hard as it is right now, and I really hope that for girls. And I really hope that people like me are opening those channels. I would say that I think that what I hope that girls could do is just take over anything that they want, and they don't feel discouraged about how hard it is or by how little amount of girls are present in the situations, and just like do what they want without thinking about it. I think that in my case, I spent some time thinking about like, why are not women in this context? Like, why, if I'm me being a woman, had something to do with like the results of something or not? And I really hope that in the future, girls don't think about these things at all, and they just focus their time and their energy in whatever they want to do. And freely without thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. On that note, what advice would you give our secret agent trainees in the audience?
Advice is be a go-getter. Like just go and get anything that you guys want, and don't think about it too much. It's like don't feel the need to justify, and don't feel the need to think, is this something that a girl would do or a boy would do, or just don't think about it. Like, follow your interests, and if people are not that receptive, or they make fun of you because you don't have the right answer, you learn and you do it again, and you do it like, and just be persistent, determined, and really care about what you guys want, and don't and don't care about what people tell you about it.
Yeah, that's all really good advice. I'm curious, like, how do you envision the future with your company? Like, I guess, what would you define as success?
Success for us is scaling this material to global scale. So we really want to solve the plastics problem, because of the need for biodegradable plastics in different contexts, in different applications, across markets, but also being able to manufacture these products and really have a push for clean energies, so that the manufacturing incorporates clean energy, so it actually can have an impact in the world, like it's widespread impact. And success for us is complete replacement of plastics and materials that are negative for the environment at global scale, at cost, and respecting people's lives, respecting the environment, developing high tech as state of the art to the edge tech, and also developing economical solutions that are sustainable in the longer term. So there's a saying in Spanish that is about, like, it's not about the one that cleans the most, it's about not polluting the most. So we want to solve this problem upstream and have a global impact.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, I know you're well on your way. So, how can our special secret agents follow your journey moving forward? Is it LinkedIn, Instagram? You have a website?
So we're not very active in our website. I don't have Facebook, and I would say LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best, and also they can send me messages in our website anyways.
Okay,
It's
great.
atacama.bio. Like the
Awesome.
Atacama desert.
We're going to definitely add that to the show notes. Okay, so let's switch to key takeaways, but first we're going to do a quick 60 seconds. So, favorite toy as a child?
Favorite toy as a child? Nature. I would say nature.
Okay. Favorite video game?
I love Zelda. The
Legend of Zelda.
The Legend of Zelda. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. That was back in the day. Okay, favorite
Back in the day.
superhero?
It's Iron Man. He went to MIT, and he also built his stuff. He's not actually like has like super powers in himself. He's just like a builder.
Yeah, makes sense. Favorite sci-fi? So, Star Wars or Star Trek or both or something even different?
Favorite sci-fi for girls? I would say a writer, Ursula K. Le Guin. So she's an American writer, and there are not many movies or films, but I highly recommended it. And she has several books that are amazing, but I would say the Dispossess is one of my favorites, and the word for world is forest. So these are my favorite books.
Okay, we're gonna add that to the show notes too. What about favorite animated series? I know you mentioned something as a child growing up that you were watching.
It was called like Ecological Garden, like I don't know how to say it in English, but favorite show. They were too old. I loved like a French TV show about the sun. dying. That it was super. Yeah, I can send you the name. Yeah, I don't recall it right now.
Okay, no, that's okay. And if are you watching any shows right now that you might recommend that we watch as well?
That a show that I would recommend. So I love The Foundation. That also comes from a book. Yeah, but for high school girls, I watch. Maybe this is too like for younger girls, but I watch Octonauts with my 3-year-old girl, with my daughter, and it's an Australian cartoon about like how animals learn about animals, and how they like, I don't know, they're super ecological and like clean the coral reef and do things like that. So I love Octonauts, but it might be too young, like for younger girls.
That's cool. That sounds very cool. Okay, we're gonna do key takeaways. So let us know if we missed anything. Pursue your dreams, even if there are obstacles. Be the representation you want to see. Yearn to be the best you can be. If you have a goal in mind, don't forget to keep on trying. Develop the gifts and resistance to go through. Grasp the opportunities around you. Be persistent and determined. Focus on your passions. Don't feel discouraged about your background. Do what you want without thinking about it. Be a go getter.
Perfect. I love it. That makes perfect sense.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paloma, for sharing your time and your journey with us. And we're really, really excited to see what you do next with your company, Atacama Biomaterials. And that's it for us today at WhizGirls Academy. Thank you, Super Secret Agents. We'll see you back here again
Thank you so
tomorrow.
much.